The moment Lena Hayes fixed Adrian Moretti's tie, she sealed her fate. One touch, one whisper, one dangerous man who could either protect her or destroy her. She thought she was just an assistant, but when a rival syndicate puts a target on her back and Adrian is forced to choose between his empire and the woman who sees past his cold exterior, everything explodes at a glala where power, betrayal, and bullets don't care about love. Will you stay to see if she survives the world she never asked to enter? Hit like and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Let's go. The elevator climbed 43 floors in silence. Lena Hayes stood with her back straight, hands clasped in front of her cream blouse, eyes fixed on the ascending numbers above the door. She'd rehearsed this morning 100 times in the mirror of her cramped studio apartment. Professional smile, firm handshake, don't stare, don't stumble. Don't give them any reason to remember you as anything other than competent. Invisible was safe. Invisible paid the bills. The doors opened with a whisper, revealing a sprawling executive suite that looked like it had been carved from black marble and ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline like a conquest already won. The reception desk gleamed under recessed lighting, and behind it sat a woman whose burgundy suit probably cost more than Lena's entire wardrobe. "Lena Hayes," she said, approaching with the kind of confidence she didn't feel. "I'm the new executive assistant." The receptionist's smile was polished and empty. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you. End of the hall. Double doors. Don't knock." Lena's stomach tightened, but she nodded and walked. The hallway stretched long and quiet, her heels clicking against Italian tile. Abstract art hung on the walls, violent splashes of red and black that felt more like warnings than decoration. She passed offices with glass walls where men in expensive suits spoke in low tones, their eyes tracking her progress with casual indifference. The double doors at the end were made of dark wood, imposing and final. She pushed them open without knocking. The office beyond was massive. A desk of polished ebony dominated the space, positioned to give its occupant a commanding view of the city below. Shelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound books that looked read rather than decorative. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something else, something sharp and clean, like winter. And behind the desk, silhouetted against the mid-morning light, stood Adrian Moretti. Lena had seen his photo in the company materials, chiseled features, dark hair swept back with careless precision, eyes the color of a storm rolling in. But photographs were lifeless things. They couldn't capture presence. He turned to face her, and the room seemed to shift. "You're early," he said. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command attention. "I believe in punctuality, Mr. Moretti." "Adrian." He moved around the desk with the fluid grace of someone who'd never questioned his right to occupy space. "Everyone calls me Adrian." He was taller than she'd expected, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit like it had been born on him. The top button of his shirt was undone, his tie slightly loosened, small imperfections that somehow made him more dangerous rather than less. "Lena Hayes," she said, extending her hand. His handshake was firm, brief, impersonal, but his eyes held hers a fraction longer than necessary, searching for something she couldn't name. "Your references were impressive," he said, releasing her hand and moving back to his desk. 3 years at Morrison & Associates, 2 at the Blackwell Group, both high-pressure environments. Both CEOs wrote glowing recommendations. "I take my work seriously. So I've noticed." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." She sat, crossing her ankles, folding her hands in her lap. Professional, composed, invisible. Adrian remained standing, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Do you know what I do, Lena?" "You run Moretti Capital, private equity, venture funding, strategic acquisitions. Your portfolio spans tech, real estate, and pharmaceuticals." "That's what the press releases say." His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "What do you think I do?" The question felt like a test. Lena chose her words carefully. "I think you take calculated risks that other people are too afraid to consider. I think you see opportunities where others see obstacles. And I think you don't tolerate incompetence." Interesting answer. He moved to the window, hands sliding into his pockets. "And what makes you think you won't be incompetent?" "Because I don't make the same mistake twice." He turned his head, glancing at her over his shoulder. Everyone makes mistakes, Miss Hayes. Then I'll make new ones. This time, his smile reached his eyes, just barely. You'll start immediately. Your desk is outside, the one closest to my door. My schedule is on the shared drive, but it changes constantly. Meetings run long, appointments get canceled, emergencies happen. You'll need to be adaptable. Understood. I take my coffee black, no sugar. I don't do small talk. I don't celebrate birthdays or holidays in the office. If someone calls and I'm in a meeting, you tell them I'm unavailable and take a message. If I'm on a call, you don't interrupt unless the building is on fire. Lena pulled a small notebook from her bag, scribbling notes. I travel frequently, Adrian continued. Sometimes with notice, sometimes without. You'll coordinate with my security team, arrange accommodations, manage logistics, questions. Do you have dietary restrictions? He raised an eyebrow. Why? You mentioned travel. If I'm booking restaurants or catering meetings, I should know. No restrictions. He studied her again, that searching look that felt like he was peeling back layers. Anything else? Your tie. Adrian's hand moved to his throat instinctively. What about it? Lena stood, setting her notebook on the chair. It's crooked. She crossed the distance between them before she could second-guess herself, reaching up to straighten the navy silk. Her fingers brushed against the fabric, adjusting the knot with practiced efficiency. She could feel the heat of him through his shirt, smell that clean winter scent up close, cedar and something darker, like smoke. There, she said softly, smoothing the tie flat against his chest. She started to step back. His hand caught her wrist, not roughly, not painfully, but firm enough to stop her retreat. Lena's breath caught. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and found them closer than they should be, darker than they'd been moments before. You should know something, Adrian said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The people who work for me don't last long, not because I fire them, though I do that too, but because this world eats soft things alive. His thumb traced a slow circle against the inside of her wrist, right over her pulse. You seem soft, Lena Hayes. She should pull away, should step back, re-establish professional boundaries, remind him that she was his assistant, not his. I'm tougher than I look, she heard herself say. Are you? His gaze dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. We'll see. He released her wrist. Lena stepped back, her heart hammering against her ribs. She reclaimed her notebook from the chair with hands that didn't quite shake, refusing to let him see how thoroughly he'd rattled her. I'll be at my desk, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Lena. She paused at the door. Welcome to Moretti Capital. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she simply nodded and walked out. The desk outside Adrian's office was sleek glass and chrome, positioned like a gatekeeper between him and the rest of the world. A new laptop sat waiting, already logged in with her credentials. 2 monitors, a phone system that looked like it required an engineering degree, and a stack of files labeled urgent. Lena sank into the leather chair and exhaled slowly. What the hell just happened? She'd worked for powerful men before, CEOs who thought their corner office gave them permission to blur lines. She knew how to deflect, how to sidestep, how to make herself small enough to avoid unwanted attention. But Adrian Moretti hadn't felt like those men. He'd felt like danger wearing a suit. Her wrist still tingled where he'd touched her. You must be the new girl. Lena looked up to find a man leaning against her desk. Mid-30s, sandy hair, expensive watch, smile that probably worked on most women. Lena Hayes, she said, executive assistant. Marcus Chen, VP of Acquisitions. He extended his hand and she shook it briefly. How's your first day going? Adrian scare you off yet? Should he have? Marcus laughed. Most people don't make it past the interview. He's particular. So I've gathered. Word of advice? Marcus lowered his voice, glancing toward Adrian's closed door. Don't take anything he says personally. He's not trying to be cruel. He just doesn't operate on the same frequency as the rest of us. Emotions aren't really his thing. Lena thought about the way Adrian had held her wrist, the heat in his eyes when he'd looked at her mouth. Emotions aren't his thing. Sure. I appreciate the advice, she said, opening her laptop. Marcus lingered. There's a group of us grabbing drinks after work on Fridays. You should come. Good way to meet people, decompress, all that. Maybe. Thank you. He smiled again, tapping her desk lightly before walking away. Lena turned her attention to the files. The top one was labeled Bellamy Acquisition, a pharmaceutical company Adrian was apparently in the process of buying. She skimmed the documents, noting the projected revenue, the terms of the deal, the timeline for closure. Her phone buzzed. An internal message from Adrian. Conference Room B, 5 minutes. She grabbed a notepad and stood. Conference Room B was 2 doors down, smaller than she'd expected, built for privacy rather than spectacle. Adrian sat at the head of a mahogany table, 3 other men flanking him. They all looked up when she entered. Gentlemen, my new assistant, Lena Hayes. Adrian gestured to an empty chair. Sit. Take notes. She sat, pen poised. We were discussing the Bellamy deal, one of the men said, older, silver-haired, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. The board is getting nervous. They think you're moving too fast. The board doesn't understand leverage, Adrian replied coolly. Bellamy's stock is dropping. Their CEO just resigned. If we wait, someone else will swoop in. Or the company will stabilize and the price will go back up, another man countered. He was younger, sharper, with the look of someone who enjoyed arguing for sport. It won't stabilize, Adrian said, not with the FDA investigation hanging over them. Lena's pen paused. She glanced up. What FDA investigation? The sharp man asked. Adrian's smile was thin. The one that hasn't been made public yet. The room went quiet. How do you know about that? The silver-haired man asked slowly. I make it my business to know things before they become public knowledge. Adrian leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Bellamy has 3 weeks, maybe 4, before the story breaks. We buy now, weather the storm, restructure the company, and sell it off in pieces within 2 years for triple what we paid. That's assuming the investigation doesn't sink them completely, the sharp man said. It won't. The violations are minor, paperwork errors, missed deadlines, bad optics, but nothing criminal. The media will eat it up for a week, then move on. Adrian's gaze flicked to Lena, then back to the men. We vote tomorrow. I expect everyone on board. It wasn't a request. The men exchanged glances, then nodded one by one. Good. Adrian stood. Dismissed. They filed out, leaving Lena alone with him. Questions? He asked, buttoning his jacket. How did you find out about the FDA investigation? I have people who tell me things. What kind of people? His eyes met hers, and something flickered there. Amusement, maybe, or appreciation. The kind you don't ask questions about. That's not ominous at all. Adrian's lips twitched. You're sharp. I like that. But there are things in this world you're better off not knowing, Lena. Trust me on that. She wanted to argue, wanted to push back, demand transparency, remind him that she couldn't do her job effectively if he kept her in the dark. But something in his expression stopped her. Understood, she said instead. Good. Back to work. The rest of the day blurred. A relentless stream of phone calls, emails, meeting requests, and fires that needed putting out. A tech journalist wanted to comment on a recent acquisition. A city councilman's office called 3 times demanding a callback. Marcus stopped by twice, ostensibly to drop off files, but clearly fishing for conversation. By 6 o'clock, most of the office had emptied. Lena rubbed her eyes, staring at her screen. You're still here. She jumped, turning to find Adrian standing behind her desk. I wanted to finish organizing your schedule for tomorrow, she said. It's after 6. Is there a rule against staying late? No, but most people can't wait to leave. He studied her, hands in his pockets. Why are you different? Because I need this job. Everyone needs their job. Not like I do. The words came out sharper than intended. She softened her tone. I have rent due, student loans, medical bills for my mother's last hospital stay. I can't afford to be anything less than indispensable. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Your mother, is she ill? She was. Cancer. She's in remission now, but the bills... Lena shook her head. It doesn't matter. I'll handle it. I'm sure you will. He glanced at his watch. Go home, Lena. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be longer. She saved her work and shut down her computer. Mr. Moretti. Adrian. Adrian. Thank you. For the opportunity. He nodded once, already turning back toward his office. Lena gathered her bag and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of him through the glass walls, standing alone in his massive office, silhouetted against the city lights. A king surveying his kingdom, or a man surrounded by walls he'd built himself. Her apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that gentrification hadn't reached yet. The lock stuck, the radiator clanged, and her neighbor's TV blared through the thin walls. But it was hers, paid for with her own money, no favors owed, no strings attached. She kicked off her heels, microwaved leftover pasta, and collapsed onto her second-hand couch. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "How was the first day, honey?" Lena smiled, typing back, "Good. Boss is intense, but fair. I think I'll like it here." Another buzz. "That's my girl. Don't let anyone push you around. I won't. Love you." She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling, replaying the day. The interview had been nerve-wracking but straightforward. The work was demanding but manageable. It was everything else that didn't make sense. The way Adrian had looked at her. The way her pulse had kicked up when he'd touched her wrist. The heat that had flooded her skin when he'd leaned close, his breath warm against her temple. "You seem soft, Lena Hayes." She wasn't soft. She'd survived her father walking out when she was 12, survived putting herself through college while working 2 jobs, survived watching her mother waste away in a hospital bed, helpless to do anything but hold her hand and pretend everything would be okay. Soft things broke. Lena Hayes had learned not to break. But something about Adrian Moretti made her feel fragile in a way she didn't understand. Like he could see through the armor she'd spent years building, right down to the parts of herself she kept hidden. It was unsettling. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of distraction she couldn't afford. She finished her pasta, showered, and climbed into bed. Tomorrow would be better. She'd establish boundaries, keep things professional, prove that she belonged in that world, even if she didn't come from it. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, she dreamed of storm-gray eyes and a voice that whispered warnings she should have heeded. Day 2 started with chaos. Lena arrived at 7:30 to find Adrian already in his office, on a call that sounded less like a conversation and more like a battle. "I don't care what he wants," Adrian's voice carried through the door. The terms were clear. "If he can't deliver, we walk." A pause. "Then let him try. He'll find out quickly that threats don't work on me." Another pause, longer this time. "No. We're done negotiating. Close it or kill it. Your choice." The call ended abruptly. Lena set her bag down, logging into her computer. Her phone rang immediately, an external line. Adrian Moretti's office. "I need to speak with him. Now!" The voice was clipped, impatient, with an accent she couldn't place. "May I ask who's calling?" "Victor Castellano. He'll know who I am." Lena glanced at Adrian's door, still closed. "Mr. Moretti is in a meeting. I can take a... I don't leave messages. Tell him Victor called. Tell him we need to talk about the Bellamy situation. Tell him it's urgent." The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone, unease creeping up her spine. She made a note. Victor Castellano called Bellamy. Urgent. And added it to the stack of messages. Adrian emerged 20 minutes later, looking no worse for wear despite whatever verbal combat he'd been waging. "Coffee," he said without preamble. "Black, no sugar." Lena stood. Already handled." He held up a cup from the break room. "But good recall." He scanned the messages on her desk, his expression unchanging until he reached the one about Victor. His jaw tightened. "When did he call?" 8:15. He said it was urgent. "Everything's urgent with Victor." Adrian crumpled the message, tossing it in the trash. "If he calls again, tell him I'm unavailable." "For how long?" "Indefinitely." Lena hesitated. "Is there something I should know about Victor Castellano?" Adrian's eyes met hers, and for a moment she thought he might actually answer. Then his expression shuddered. "He's a competitor, a persistent one. Don't worry about him." But she did worry, because the way Adrian had said competitor sounded less like business rivalry and more like a declaration of war. The morning blurred into meetings, a call with investors, a strategy session with the acquisitions team, a tense negotiation with Bellamy's legal counsel. Lena took notes, organized documents, fielded calls, and learned quickly that Adrian's world moved at a breakneck pace that left no room for hesitation. At noon, Marcus appeared at her desk with 2 sandwiches. "Lunch," he announced, setting one in front of her. "You look like you haven't eaten." "I haven't had time." "Make time. Adrian's schedule is brutal, but you're no good to him if you pass out from hunger." Marcus perched on the edge of her desk. "How's day 2 treating you?" "Like drinking from a fire hose." He laughed. "Yeah, that sounds about right. It gets easier. You learn the rhythm, figure out what he needs before he asks for it." "Does he always work like this?" "Always. I've seen him go 72 hours on 4 hours of sleep and still outthink everyone in the room." Marcus unwrapped his sandwich. "The man's a machine." Lena thought about the way Adrian had touched her wrist, the heat in his eyes. "Not a machine." "What about his personal life?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Curious already?" "Just trying to understand my boss." "Adrian doesn't have a personal life. He has work, and he has—" Marcus trailed off, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Other obligations." "What kind of obligations?" "The kind that keep him busy when he's not here." Marcus stood, brushing crumbs from his hands. "My advice? Don't dig too deep. Adrian values discretion above almost everything else. You do your job, keep your head down, and everyone stays happy." He left before she could ask more questions. Lena ate half the sandwich, her mind churning. Other obligations. What did that mean? Family, investments, something else entirely? Her phone rang. Internal line. "Conference room A," Adrian's voice said. "Now." She grabbed her notepad and hurried down the hall. Conference room A was larger than B, glass walls, modern furniture, a view that made the city look small. Adrian stood at the head of the table with 2 men she didn't recognize. One was tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of stillness that suggested military training. The other was older, gray-haired, with sharp eyes that cataloged everything. "Lena, this is James and Robert," Adrian said. "My security team." Security team. Not bodyguards. Not consultants. Security. "Ma'am." James nodded, his voice a low rumble. Robert just watched her, his expression unreadable. "We're implementing new protocols," Adrian continued. "James will brief you on access procedures, emergency contacts, and threat assessment." "Threat assessment?" Lena repeated. "Standard precautions." Adrian's tone was dismissive, but something in his posture said otherwise. "James." The large man stepped forward. "You'll receive a security badge that grants access to the executive floor, Mr. Moretti's office, and conference rooms A through D. Don't lose it. Don't lend it to anyone. If you see someone on this floor without proper identification, you alert us immediately. Okay? You'll also receive a panic button, small, discreet, clips to your keychain. You press it, we respond. No questions, no delays." Lena's stomach tightened. "Why would I need a panic button?" "Because people in this industry make enemies," Robert said quietly, "and sometimes those enemies don't care about collateral damage." She looked at Adrian. "Is there a specific threat I should know about?" "No," he said, too quickly. "Then why—" "Precautions, Lena. That's all." Adrian's expression was carved from stone. "James will walk you through the rest. I have a call." He left, taking Robert with him. James handed her a badge and a small black device no bigger than a lighter. "Keep this on you, always." "This feels like more than precautions." "Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't." James's gaze was steady. "But Mr. Moretti doesn't take chances with the people who work for him. You're under his protection now. That means something." "What does it mean?" "It means if anyone tries to hurt you, they go through us first." He nodded toward the door. "That's all I can say." "Questions?" 1,000 of them. But Lena swallowed them down. "No." "Good. Welcome to the team, Miss Hayes." The afternoon was a haze of emails and scheduling conflicts. Lena rearranged Adrian's calendar 4 times, coordinated with his driver about a dinner meeting uptown, and fielded 3 more calls from Victor Castellano, each one progressively more insistent. "Tell Adrian I know what he's doing," Victor said on the last call. his accent thickening with anger. Tell him it won't work. I'll pass along the message, Lena said evenly. You do that, sweetheart, and tell him Victor Castellano doesn't forget. The line went dead. Lena set the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. She made a note, walked to Adrian's office, and knocked. Come in. He was standing by the window again, phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. He glanced at her, held up one finger, then finished the conversation. Si, domani. Ciao. He lowered the phone. What is it? Victor Castellano called again, 3 times. He's persistent. What did he say? Lena repeated the message verbatim. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Anything else? He called me sweetheart. Thought you should know. Did he? Adrian's voice went very quiet. Next time he calls, you transfer him to me, directly. Understood. She turned to leave. Lena. She paused. If Victor or anyone else makes you uncomfortable, you tell me immediately. Understood? It was just a phone call. I don't care if it's a phone call, an email, or a look across a crowded room. You tell me. His eyes held hers, intense and unyielding. This world isn't kind to people who hesitate. I'm not afraid of some territorial businessmen. You should be. Adrian crossed the distance between them, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Victor Castellano isn't a businessman. He's a predator. And predators hunt soft targets. There was that word again. Soft. I'm not soft, Lena said, lifting her chin. No? His hand rose, fingers brushing her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. You walked into my world wearing hope like armor. That's the softest thing I've ever seen. Her breath caught. Hope isn't weakness. In my world it is. His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. But maybe that's what makes you dangerous. I'm not dangerous. Aren't you? His gaze dropped to her mouth again, lingering there long enough to make her pulse stutter. You've been here 2 days, and already you're making me rethink things I swore I'd never reconsider. What things? He smiled, small, fleeting, and utterly devastating. That's the problem. I don't know yet. He stepped back, the moment shattering like glass. Go home, Lena. It's late. She left without arguing, her skin still burning where he'd touched her. Day 3 brought clarity. Victor Castellano called at 9 a.m. sharp. Put Adrian on, he demanded. 1 moment. Lena transferred the call without hesitation. Through the glass walls, she watched Adrian take the call, watched his expression harden, his posture shift, watched him listen for 30 seconds before hanging up mid-sentence. He emerged from his office like a storm breaking. Pack a bag, he told her. We're going to Chicago. When? Now. For how long? 2 days, maybe 3. He was already moving, grabbing files from his desk. There's a car waiting downstairs. We leave in 20 minutes. Lena didn't argue. She called the travel coordinator, arranged accommodations, notified the Chicago office, and sent Adrian's calendar updates to everyone who needed them. 18 minutes later, she was in the back of a black SUV with Adrian, headed for the private airfield across the river. What's in Chicago? She asked as the city blurred past. A problem that needs solving. Does this problem have a name? Several. Adrian stared out the window, his profile carved from stone. Victor's made his move. Now I make mine. What kind of move? He looked at her then, really looked at her. The kind that changes everything. The plane was sleek, luxurious, and waiting. Lena had never flown private before, had barely flown at all. But she kept her composure as they boarded, as the engines roared to life, as the ground fell away beneath them. Adrian worked the entire flight, laptop open, phone to his ear, speaking in a mixture of English and Italian that she couldn't quite follow. She took notes when he asked, pulled up files when he needed them, stayed quiet when he didn't. 2 hours later, they touched down in Chicago. Another black SUV waited. Another silent driver. Another city that looked like a chessboard waiting for the next move. The hotel was downtown, elegant, expensive, the kind of place where discretion was currency. Adrian checked them into adjoining suites without blinking at the cost. Dinner at 8, he told her as they rode the elevator to the 20th floor. Dress professionally. Who are we meeting? People you need to see but don't need to know. Her suite was beautiful. King bed, marble bathroom, windows overlooking the river. She unpacked quickly, showered, and stood in front of her limited wardrobe trying to figure out what professionally meant in Adrian Moretti's world. She settled on a black sheath dress. Simple, elegant, nothing flashy. Paired it with the only heels she'd brought and twisted her hair into a low knot. At 7:55, she knocked on the door connecting their suites. Adrian opened it, and her breath caught. He'd changed into a black suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. His hair was still damp from the shower, pushed back carelessly. He looked like sin dressed up for church. His eyes traveled over her slowly, missing nothing. "You'll do," he said. Something about the way he said it, low and rough, made her skin flush. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place that didn't have a sign and didn't take reservations from just anyone. Adrian walked in like he owned it, and maybe he did. The maitre d' led them to a private room in the back, quiet, dim, with a table set for 6. 3 men were already seated. They stood when Adrian entered, and Lena felt the shift in the room, the way power recognized power. "Gentlemen," Adrian said smoothly, "thank you for meeting on short notice." Adrian? The oldest man, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, extended his hand. "It's been too long." "Not long enough, Sal." Adrian shook his hand briefly. "You remember my associate, Lena Hay?" Lena smiled politely, shaking hands with each man in turn. Sal, Marco, a younger man named Tony who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They sat, ordered wine, made small talk about the weather, the city, the baseball season. But underneath, tension coiled like a snake. "So," Sal said finally, setting down his glass. "Victor Castellano." "Yes," Adrian replied. "He's making a lot of noise about Bellamy Pharmaceuticals." "He's welcome to make noise. It won't change the outcome." Marco leaned forward. "He's claiming you had insider information, that you knew about the FDA investigation before it went public." "Victor can claim whatever he wants. Doesn't make it true. Doesn't make it false either." Sal's gaze was steady. "People are asking questions, Adrian, the kind of questions that lead to investigations. Let them investigate. They won't find anything." "You sound awfully confident." "I am confident because I didn't do anything illegal." Adrian's smile was cold. Victor, on the other hand. The men exchanged glances. "What are you saying?" Tony asked. "I'm saying Victor's been cutting corners for years. Bribing inspectors, falsifying reports, laundering money through shell companies. He's built an empire on broken rules." Adrian's voice was calm, almost conversational. "It would be a shame if someone decided to look into that." Silence. "You're playing a dangerous game," Sal said quietly. "I'm playing the only game that matters." Adrian stood, buttoning his jacket. "Victor wanted a war. He'll get one. But it won't end the way he thinks." He nodded to Lena. "We're done here." She rose quickly, following him out of the restaurant. The SUV was waiting. Neither of them spoke on the ride back to the hotel. In the elevator, Lena finally broke the silence. "What just happened?" "I made my position clear." By threatening to destroy Victor Castellano? By reminding him that threats go both ways. Adrian's jaw tightened. "He thinks he can intimidate me. He's wrong." The elevator doors opened. They walked to their suites in silence. At her door, Adrian stopped. "You did well tonight," he said. "I didn't do anything." "Exactly. You stayed quiet, stayed sharp. Didn't ask questions you shouldn't ask." His gaze held hers. "That's rare." "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're smart enough to survive in a world that chews up people like you." He stepped closer. "I know you don't scare easily. I know you're lying when you say you're not afraid." "I'm not." "You are." His hand rose, fingers sliding through the hair at her temple. "But you're still here. That takes courage." Her heart hammered. "Adrian, go to bed, Lena." His voice was rough, strained. "While I still let you." He turned and disappeared into his suite, the door closing with a quiet click. Lena stood frozen, her skin burning, her mind racing. What the hell am I doing? She didn't know, but she knew she was in over her head. And worse, she knew she didn't want to leave. Lena didn't sleep. She lay in the king-sized bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Adrian's words, the heat of his touch, the way his voice had gone rough when he told her to go to bed while he still let her. Every nerve in her body felt charged, alive in a way that had nothing to do with professional ambition and everything to do with the man on the other side of that connecting door. This was a mistake. She knew it with the same certainty she knew her own name. Getting involved with Adrian Moretti, even thinking about getting involved, would end badly. Men like him didn't do relationships. They did transactions, power plays, temporary arrangements that served their purposes and nothing more. But knowing something and feeling it were two different things entirely. At 6 a.m., she gave up on sleep and showered. By 7, she was dressed in gray slacks and a cream blouse, hair pulled back, makeup minimal. Professional, controlled. Nothing that suggested she'd spent half the night imagining what might have happened if she'd walked through that connecting door instead of staying on her side of it. She was reviewing Adrian's schedule on her laptop when she heard movement in his suite. Footsteps. The sound of a phone call conducted in low Italian. Then silence. At 7:30, he knocked on the connecting door. Lena opened it to find him already dressed, looking like he'd slept perfectly despite the tension that had crackled between them hours earlier. "Breakfast," he said. "Downstairs in 15 minutes. I can order room service if you'd prefer. Downstairs." His tone left no room for argument. The hotel restaurant was half empty, early risers scattered among white tablecloths and fresh flowers. Adrian chose a corner table with a view of the entrance, strategic positioning that Lena was beginning to recognize as habit rather than preference. They ordered coffee, eggs, toast that neither of them touched. "We have 3 meetings today," Adrian said, scrolling through his phone. "First one's at 9. Local real estate developers interested in partnering on a mixed-use project downtown. Second meeting is lunch with the Castellano family attorney." Lena's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "Victor's attorney?" "His cousin, actually, man named Paul Castellano. Different branch of the family tree, different priorities." Adrian set his phone down. "Paul doesn't like Victor any more than I do. He's been looking for a way out of the family business for years. And you're offering him one." "I'm offering him a clean exit and enough money to make it worth his while." Adrian's smile was thin. "In exchange, he gives me everything he knows about Victor's operation. Financial records, shell companies, offshore accounts. Everything." Lena processed this slowly. "That's not just business. That's war." "I told you, Victor chose this path." Adrian's gaze met hers. "I'm just making sure he regrets it." "What about the third meeting?" Something shifted in his expression. There and gone so fast she almost missed it. "Personal matter. You don't need to be there." "Understood." They finished breakfast in silence. At 8:45, the SUV collected them from the lobby and drove them to a gleaming office tower on Michigan Avenue. The real estate developers were exactly what Lena expected. 3 men in their 50s, expensive suits, practiced smiles, and enough ego to fill the room twice over. Adrian was masterful. He listened more than he spoke, asked pointed questions that exposed weaknesses in their proposal, and negotiated terms that left them thinking they'd won when clearly they'd just handed him exactly what he wanted. By 11, the deal was structured. By 11:30, contracts were being drafted. By noon, they were back in the SUV heading to a restaurant on the north side. Paul Castellano was nothing like his cousin Victor. Where Victor was aggressive and volatile, Paul was quiet and measured. A man who'd survived in a dangerous family by being smarter than everyone else and knowing when to keep his mouth shut. He stood when they arrived, shaking Adrian's hand with the wariness of someone who knew exactly how sharp the blade was, but needed to grasp it anyway. "Adrian, thank you for meeting." "Paul," Adrian gestured to Lena, "my assistant, Lena Hayes." Paul's handshake was brief, his eyes kind. "Ma'am." They sat, ordered lunch, made small talk that felt like a dance around landmines. Finally, Paul leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You know what you're asking me to do." "I do. My family will never forgive this." "Your family stopped being your family the moment Victor started using them as shields for his criminal enterprise." Adrian's voice was calm, factual. "You're not betraying anyone, Paul. You're protecting yourself. Tell that to Victor when he finds out." Victor won't find out. Not from me. Adrian pulled a folder from his briefcase, sliding it across the table. Everything you need is in there. New identity, new accounts, new life. 24 hours after you hand over the files, you disappear, permanently. Paul opened the folder, scanning the contents. His hands trembled slightly. This is real. I don't deal in fantasies. Why are you doing this? Paul looked up, searching Adrian's face. Victor's been a thorn in your side for years. You could have handled this a dozen different ways. Why now? Why this? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because he threatened something that belongs to me. Paul's gaze flicked to Lena, then back to Adrian. Understanding dawned in his eyes. I see. Do you? More than you probably want me to. Paul closed the folder. I'll need 48 hours to compile everything. Can you give me that? You have 72 after that the offer expires. Understood. Paul stood, tucking the folder under his arm. Adrian, Miss Hayes, thank you. He left without looking back. Lena waited until they were alone before speaking. He thinks we're together. I know. You didn't correct him. No. Adrian's eyes met hers. I didn't. Why not? Because the truth is more complicated than a simple yes or no. He signaled for the check. And because sometimes letting people believe what they want to believe is more useful than correcting them. They returned to the hotel at 2. Adrian disappeared into his suite for his personal meeting, leaving Lena alone with her laptop and a growing sense that she was standing at the edge of something she couldn't see clearly. She worked for 3 hours, emails, scheduling, coordinating with the New York office. At 5, her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Done for the day. Dinner at 7. Wear something nice. Lena stared at the message. Something nice. Not professional. Not business appropriate. Nice. She opened her suitcase and stared at its contents with growing dismay. She'd packed for meetings, not dinners that required something nice. The black sheath dress was her best option, but she'd already worn it last night. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. Check the closet. Frowning, Lena crossed to the suite's walk-in closet and pulled open the door. 3 dress boxes sat stacked on the shelf, each one bearing the logo of a high-end boutique she'd never been able to afford. Her heart kicked. She opened the first box. Inside was a dress the color of deep wine, silk that caught the light like water. The second box held a midnight blue gown with a neckline that dipped low but tasteful. The third was emerald green, simple and elegant. A note was tucked into the green dress box. Choose whichever you prefer. A. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dresses. This was too much. Way too much. Assistants didn't receive $1,000 dresses from their bosses. This crossed every professional line that existed. She should return them. Should march through that connecting door and tell Adrian Moretti that she wasn't for sale, wasn't interested in whatever game he was playing, wasn't going to be another conquest in his collection. Instead, she lifted the emerald dress from its box and held it against herself in the mirror. It was perfect. She hated that it was perfect. At 6:30, she showered and slipped into the dress. It fit like it had been made for her, which, she realized with a jolt, it probably had been. Adrian must have gotten her measurements somehow. The thought should have unsettled her. Instead, it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. She left her hair down, applied makeup with a careful hand, and slipped into the heels she'd brought from New York. At 6:55, she knocked on the connecting door. Adrian opened it immediately, and whatever words she'd prepared died in her throat. He wore a dark suit that made his eyes look almost silver in the low light. His hair was styled back, his jaw freshly shaved. He looked devastating. His gaze traveled over her slowly, and she watched something flicker in his eyes, heat and hunger, and something darker she couldn't name. Beautiful, he said quietly. Adrian, I can't accept. You can. You will. He stepped closer. Consider it part of your job. Sometimes you'll need to attend events that require a certain presentation. This is one of those times. What kind of event requires a dress like this? His smile was slow, dangerous. The kind where appearances matter more than truth. The restaurant was exclusive even by Chicago standards. No menu, no prices, just a chef who prepared whatever he deemed appropriate, and guests who understood that eating here was a privilege, not a right. Adrian's table was in a private alcove overlooking the city, candlelight flickering against white linen. They ordered wine. Appetizers arrived without request, delicate, artful, the kind of food that tasted like money. "Tell me something true," Adrian said suddenly. Lena looked up from her plate. "What?" "Something true. Something you don't tell people." He leaned back in his chair, watching her. "I want to know who you are when you're not being my assistant." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of surfaces. Everyone in my world wears masks. I want to see yours slip." She should deflect, should keep the conversation light, professional, safe. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'm terrified all the time." Adrian went very still. "Of what?" "Everything. That I'm not good enough. That I'll fail. That I'll end up like my mother, working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, watching her dreams shrink until they fit inside a 1-bedroom apartment with water stains on the ceiling." Lena's fingers tightened around her wine glass. "I'm terrified that no matter how hard I work, it won't be enough. That I'll always be one emergency away from losing everything." "Is that why you took this job?" "Partly. The money's good. Better than anything I could have gotten elsewhere." She met his eyes. "But also because you scare me." His eyebrow rose. "I scare you?" "Not in the way you think. You scare me because you're everything I was taught to avoid. Powerful, dangerous. The kind of man who gets what he wants and doesn't apologize for it." She paused. "But also because when you look at me, I don't feel invisible. And I've spent my whole life learning how to be invisible." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My turn." "For what?" "Something true." He set down his glass. "I don't sleep well. Haven't for years. Most nights I manage 3, maybe 4 hours before my mind starts cataloging everything that could go wrong. Every threat, every weakness, every vulnerability." His gaze held hers. "It's exhausting living like that. But it's the only way I know how to survive." "What are you surviving?" "Expectations, legacy, the weight of being a Moretti." His jaw tightened. "My father built an empire on blood and fear. When he died, I inherited it, all of it. The businesses, the reputation, the enemies. I've spent 10 years trying to legitimize what he created, to turn something ugly into something sustainable. But the past doesn't let go easily." "Is that what Victor represents? The past?" "Victor represents everyone who thinks they can take what's mine because my father isn't here to stop them anymore." Adrian's voice was cold, controlled. "He's wrong." The main course arrived, perfectly cooked steak, roasted vegetables, sauces Lena couldn't name. They ate slowly, the conversation shifting to safer topics. Art, travel, books they'd read, the mask slipping back into place inch by inch. But something had changed. Some barrier had cracked. After dinner, they walked. Chicago's downtown glittered around them, the river reflecting city lights like scattered diamonds. Adrian's hand found the small of her back, guiding her through crowds with casual possessiveness that should have bothered her, but didn't. They stopped on a bridge overlooking the water. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said. Lena's stomach tightened. "What?" "Tomorrow, we're meeting with someone who won't be fooled by professional boundaries or careful explanations." He turned to face her fully. "He'll see the way I look at you. He'll notice the dress, the dinner, the fact that I can't seem to keep my hands off you, and he'll use it." "Who is he?" "His name is Dmitry Volkov. He runs the Eastern European syndicate that supplies half the pharmaceutical distribution on the East Coast. He's interested in partnering with me on the Bellamy acquisition." Adrian's expression was grim. "He's also ruthless, paranoid, and extremely dangerous. If he thinks you're a weakness, he'll exploit it." "Then why bring me?" "Because not bringing you would raise more questions than bringing you. And because—" He stopped, jaw working. "Because I don't want you out of my sight until this is over." "What exactly is this?" "War." He said it simply, like he was discussing the weather. "Victor's not going to back down. Paul's information will hurt him, but it won't destroy him. Eventually, he'll retaliate. And when he does, anyone close to me becomes a target." Lena's breath caught. "You think he'd come after me?" "I think he'd come after anyone he thought I cared about." Adrian's hand rose, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything else. And I'm starting to care about you far more than I should. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Adrian, I know, this is insane. You work for me. You've been in my world for less than a week. There are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. His thumb brushed her lower lip. But I can't seem to make myself care about any of them. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you, Lena. I've wanted you since you fixed my tie and looked at me like I was just a man instead of a monster. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm saying if you tell me to stop, I will. But if you don't... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Lena knew she should step back, should remind him about professional boundaries, power dynamics, all the very good reasons why this was a catastrophically bad idea. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. Adrian went rigid for a heartbeat. Surprise, maybe, or disbelief. Then his hands were in her hair, pulling her closer, kissing her back with an intensity that stole her breath and her sense and every rational thought she'd ever had. He tasted like wine and danger and something darker she couldn't name. His mouth was hot against hers, demanding and possessive and nothing like she'd imagined in those dangerous moments late at night when she'd let herself wonder. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian's eyes were molten. My room, he said roughly. Now. Adrian, unless you want me to take you against this railing where anyone can see, my room. Now. Heat flooded through her. She nodded. They barely made it back to the hotel. In the elevator, Adrian's mouth found her neck, teeth grazing sensitive skin that made her gasp. His hand spanned her waist, holding her steady as she trembled. The suite door had barely closed before he was on her again, backing her against the wall, kissing her like she was air and he'd been drowning. Lena's fingers fumbled with his jacket, pushing it off his shoulders. His hands found the zipper of her dress, sliding it down with maddening slowness. Tell me you want this, he said against her mouth. I want this. Tell me you understand what it means. I don't care what it means. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I want you, Adrian. Just you. Something in his expression cracked, the careful control he wore like armor splintering to reveal the man beneath. Raw, hungry, almost desperate. He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her to the bed. The emerald dress pooled on the floor. His shirt followed, then his belt, his pants, until there was nothing between them but heat and want, and the knowledge that this changed everything. He was gentle at first, surprisingly so, his hands mapping her body like he was memorizing every curve, every scar, every secret she carried. But when she arched against him, nails digging into his shoulders, something unleashed. The control shattered. What followed was fire, consuming and relentless and so intense that Lena forgot her own name, forgot where she was, forgot everything except the feel of him moving inside her and the sound of her name on his lips like a prayer. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on heated skin, heart still racing. Adrian's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. You okay? More than okay. Lena turned her head to look at him. You? Trying to figure out what the hell I just did. Regrets already? No. He pulled her closer. But this complicates things. Things were already complicated. Fair point. He was quiet for a moment. Lena, I need you to understand something. My world, the real one, not the sanitized version the press sees, it's dangerous. People get hurt. People die. And now that you're... He stopped, searching for words. Now that you're mine, that danger extends to you. I'm not yours. His arm tightened around her. Aren't you? She should argue, should remind him that one night didn't equal ownership, that she was her own person, that he didn't get to claim her like she was property. But lying there in his arms, feeling safer than she had in years despite everything he'd just told her, she couldn't quite make the words come. What happens tomorrow? She asked instead. Tomorrow we meet with Dimitri. We play our parts. We make him believe that this is real. Isn't it? Adrian's hand cupped her face, tilting it up so she had to meet his eyes. I don't know yet, but I want it to be. They didn't sleep much, couldn't seem to stop touching each other. as if physical contact could somehow anchor them against whatever storm was coming. When Lena finally drifted off near dawn, Adrian's arms were still around her, his breath warm against her hair. She woke to find him already dressed, standing by the window with his phone to his ear. "I don't care what he wants," Adrian was saying. "The terms stand. He accepts or he walks." A pause. "Then let him walk. We have other options." He ended the call and turned to find her watching. "Morning," he said. "Hi." Lena sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. In the morning light, with distance between them, last night felt surreal. Was that about Dmitri? No. Different problem. He crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, terrified." "Of me?" "Of this. Of what it means. Of what happens when we get back to New York and reality sets in." She met his eyes. "Of what happens if Victor finds out?" "Victor won't touch you. I promise you that." "You can't promise that." "I can. And I will." His hand found hers. "Lena, I know this is fast. I know it's insane. But I meant what I said last night. You're mine now. That means something in my world. It means I protect you. It means anyone who comes after you comes through me first. That's not how normal relationships work. We're not normal. And this sure as hell isn't a normal relationship." His smile was wry. "But it's what we've got." Lena wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this was destined to end in disaster. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him, soft and slow, a promise she wasn't sure she should be making. "When's the meeting with Dmitri?" she asked when they broke apart. "Noon. We have time." "For what?" His smile turned wicked. "I can think of a few things." They barely made it to the meeting on time. Dmitri Volkov was exactly what Lena expected, and somehow worse. Tall, broad-shouldered, with pale eyes that missed nothing and a smile that never reached them. He greeted Adrian with the wariness of one predator acknowledging another. "Moretti, it's been too long." "Dmitri," Adrian shook his hand briefly. "My associate, Lena Hayes." Dmitri's gaze raked over her, cold and assessing. "Charming." The word felt like an insult. They met in a private room at an exclusive club, the kind of place that catered to people who valued discretion above all else. Dmitri had brought two men with him, silent, dangerous, their eyes tracking every movement. "So," Dmitri said once they were settled, "Bellamy Pharmaceuticals, you're making quite the play." "It's a solid acquisition," Adrian replied. "Strategic positioning, good fundamentals, room for growth." "And the FDA investigation?" "Minor. It'll blow over." "Victor Castellano doesn't think so. He's been making noise about your methods." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Victor's entitled to his opinion. He's also entitled to be angry. You took something he wanted." Dmitri's pale eyes shifted to Lena, lingering just long enough to make her skin crawl. "Seems to be a pattern with you." "I take what's worth having," Adrian said coolly, "and I keep what's mine." "Possessive," Dmitri smiled. "I can respect that. But possession requires protection. Can you protect your investments?" "Always have." "Even against someone like Victor?" "He's not known for playing fair." "Neither am I." Dmitri laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "No, I suppose you're not." He leaned back in his chair. "I'll partner with you on Bellamy. 60-40 split, my favor." 50-50. 60-40? Or I walk? Adrian considered this. Then he said, 55, 45. Final offer. Done. Dmitri extended his hand. They shook. The meeting continued for another hour. Details, logistics, timelines. Lena took notes mechanically, aware of Dmitri's gaze returning to her again and again. When it was finally over and they were back in the SUV heading to the airport, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That was awful, I know. Adrian pulled her against his side, but necessary. He kept looking at me like I was something he wanted to acquire. He was trying to unsettle me, remind me that in his world, everything has a price. Adrian's arm tightened around her. He failed. They flew back to New York in silence, both lost in thought. When the city came into view through the plane's window, Lena felt reality crashing back like a wave. Tomorrow, they'd return to the office, to professional boundaries and careful distance, and the fiction that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. At her apartment building, Adrian walked her to the door despite her protests. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. "Adrian, we need to talk about how this works. At the office, I mean. It works however we want it to work. People will notice. Let them." He kissed her forehead. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be long." He left before she could argue. Inside her apartment, Lana collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "How's Chicago?" She typed back. "Complicated. Tell you later." Another buzz. This time from Adrian. "Sleep well." And Lena? "No regrets." She smiled despite everything. "No regrets," she typed back. But as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross, and that whatever came next would test everything she thought she knew about survival, loyalty, and what it meant to be chosen by a man who lived in shadows. The office felt different when Lena walked in Monday morning. Or maybe she was the one who'd changed. She couldn't tell anymore. The same marble floors, the same glass walls, the same Manhattan skyline framed like a trophy. But now she knew what Adrian's hands felt like in her hair, knew the sound he made when she touched him, knew the weight of his body pressing her into expensive hotel sheets. She set her bag down at her desk and tried to pretend her heart wasn't racing. Adrian's door was closed, voices murmuring behind it. She logged into her computer, pulling up his schedule. Back-to-back meetings until 3, then a conference call with investors, then dinner with a tech CEO who wanted Moretti Capital's backing for some AI startup. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "Good morning." Just 2 words, but they made her skin flush. "Morning," she typed back. "Coffee? Already have some. But thank you." Professional, distant, exactly what it should be. So why did it feel wrong? The morning blurred past in a haze of emails and phone calls. Marcus stopped by twice, chatting about the weekend, asking if she'd settled in okay. She smiled and nodded and gave him nothing real, the way she'd learned to do. Invisible again, safe again. Except she didn't feel safe anymore. At noon, Adrian's door opened and 3 men filed out, their expressions grim. Adrian appeared in the doorway, catching her eye. "Lunch," he said. "My office. Now." Lena grabbed her notepad and followed him inside. He closed the door behind her, and suddenly the air felt thick, charged. Adrian stood with his back to her, hands braced on his desk. "That meeting was about Victor," he said without turning around. "What about him?" "He knows about Chicago, about Dimitri, about Paul." Adrian's shoulders were tight with tension. "Someone's feeding him information." Lena's stomach dropped. "A leak?" "Has to be. Too many details for it to be coincidence." He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "I need to know who I can trust." "You can trust me." "Can I?" The question wasn't accusatory, just tired, like he'd asked it too many times and stopped believing the answers. "Everyone says that right up until they don't." She crossed the distance between them, stopping close enough to touch, but not touching. "I'm not everyone." "No, you're not." His hand rose, fingers brushing her jaw. "You're the woman who's going to get hurt because I was selfish enough to want you anyway." "I can handle myself." "That's what worries me. You think you can, and maybe you're right, but this world doesn't care how tough you are, Lena. It eats people alive." His thumb traced her lower lip. "And I just painted a target on your back by making you mine." "Then unpaint it." "I can't, even if I wanted to, and I don't. It's too late. Victor knows, Dimitri knows. Everyone who matters knows that Adrian Moretti cares about his assistant, which means you're leverage now." Lena's pulse kicked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need protection, real protection, not just James and Robert shadowing you from a distance." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Starting today, you don't go anywhere alone. Someone drives you to work, someone drives you home. You don't take the subway, you don't walk through the park, you don't deviate from approved routes." Ugh, that's insane. "That's reality." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I won't lose you because I was too arrogant to see the danger coming. Not you." The raw fear in his voice gutted her, This wasn't the cold, calculating CEO she'd met 2 weeks ago. This was a man terrified of losing something he'd just found. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." He kissed her then, hard and possessive and desperate, like he was trying to brand her with his touch. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "I have to find the leak," he said quietly. "And when I do, I have to make an example. You understand that?" "What kind of example?" "The permanent kind." Lena's stomach turned. She knew what he meant. Knew that in Adrian's world, betrayal had consequences that didn't involve HR meetings or severance packages. "Does it have to be?" she asked. "Yes, because if I show weakness now, if I let someone betray me and walk away unpunished, it tells everyone else that I'm soft, that I can be played." His eyes were hard, uncompromising. "I can't afford that. Not with Victor circling and Dimitri watching and a dozen other predators waiting for me to slip. This is the world you live in. This is the world I survive in. There's a difference." He stepped back, creating distance that felt like miles. "I won't apologize for it, but I will protect you from the worst of it as long as I can." A knock on the door interrupted them. Adrian's expression shuddered instantly, the mask sliding back into place. "Come in." Marcus entered, tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but the Bellamy board just approved the acquisition. Papers are being drawn up now." "Excellent. Schedule a press conference for Friday. I want this public before Victor can spin it his way." Adrian's voice was all business, no trace of the vulnerability he'd shown moments before. "Anything else?" "Paul Castellano called, said he has the files ready for pickup." Adrian's eyes flicked to Lena, then back to Marcus. "I'll handle it personally. Set up a meeting for tonight. Somewhere public, lots of witnesses." "On it." Marcus left, closing the door behind him. Adrian turned to Lena. "I need you to stay late tonight." "For the meeting with Paul?" "No. You're staying here, in this office, with James outside the door." His tone left no room for argument. "I can't risk Victor making a move while I'm distracted. I'm not a damsel who needs locking in a tower. No, you're a weakness I can't afford to expose." He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. "Stay. Here. Understood?" "Fine." He paused at the door, looking back at her. "Lena, I know this isn't what you signed up for." "No," she agreed. "But I'm still here." Something in his expression softened. "Yeah, you are." He left, and Lena sank into the chair across from his desk, her mind spinning. 2 weeks ago, she'd been invisible, safe, alone, but unnoticed, which was its own kind of protection. Now she was caught in a war she barely understood, claimed by a man who lived in shadows, surrounded by danger she couldn't see coming. And the worst part? She didn't want to leave. The afternoon dragged. Lena worked through emails and scheduling conflicts, very aware of James standing guard outside Adrian's office like a sentinel. At 6, most of the floor cleared out. At 7, the cleaning crew made their rounds. By 8, she was alone except for James and the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. "Meeting went well. Paul delivered. Heading back now." "Good," she typed back. "How are you holding up?" "Bored, but alive." "I'll take alive." A pause, then another message. "Order dinner, whatever you want, my treat." She smiled despite everything and called the Italian place down the street that delivered to the building. Pasta, breadsticks, tiramisu because she needed something sweet to balance the tension coiled in her chest. The food arrived 20 minutes later. She ate at Adrian's desk, looking out at the city lights and thinking about how surreal her life had become. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Miss Hayes?" The voice was smooth, accented, familiar in a way that made her skin crawl. "We haven't been properly introduced. My name is Victor Castellano." Lena's blood went cold. "How did you get this number?" "I make it my business to know things, like the fact that you're currently alone in Adrian Moretti's office, eating pasta carbonara from Rossini's and probably wondering why I'm calling." He paused. "Am I wrong?" She looked toward the window, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. 43 floors up, glass walls, lights blazing. Anyone with binoculars could see her. "What do you want?" "To talk. Just talk." Victor's tone was almost friendly. Adrian and I have a complicated relationship, but you're new to all this. Innocent, even. I'd hate to see you get hurt because of choices he's making. I can take care of myself. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you're a pawn in a game you don't understand, being moved around a board by a man who's very good at sacrificing pieces when it suits him. Adrian wouldn't what? Use you? Discard you when you're no longer useful? Victor laughed softly. Ask yourself this, Miss Hayes. Why did he really hire you? Out of all the qualified candidates, why you? A girl from nowhere with no connections, no power, nothing that would make her valuable to a man like Adrian Moretti. Lena's throat tightened. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't. But you should. Because I can offer you something Adrian never will. A way out. Safety, security, a future that doesn't involve wondering if you'll wake up one morning to find yourself expendable. I'm hanging up now. One more thing. Victor's voice hardened. Ask Adrian about Chicago, about what really happened to the last person who got too close to him. Ask him about Elena. The line went dead. Lena sat frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, heart hammering. Elena. Who the hell was Elena? The door opened and she jumped, spinning around. Adrian stood in the doorway, taking in her expression with sharp eyes. What's wrong? Victor called me. Adrian went very still. What did he say? He tried to convince me you're using me, that I should be afraid of you. She set the phone down carefully. Who's Elena? The name hit him like a physical blow. She watched him absorb it, watched his expression shudder completely. Where did you hear that name? Victor mentioned her, said I should ask you what happened to the last person who got too close. Lena stood, crossing her arms. So I'm asking. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Close the door. She did. He moved to the window, staring out at the city. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Elena was my fiancée. 4 years ago. Lena's chest tightened. What happened to her? She died. Car accident on the FDR drive. Hit and run. Driver was never found. Adrian's reflection in the glass was carved from stone. The police called it random. Wrong place, wrong time. But you don't think it was random? No. I think someone sent a message. I think they killed her to hurt me, to show me that no matter how powerful I became, I couldn't protect the people I loved. He turned to face her. And I think Victor knows exactly who did it, because he's the one who ordered it. The room felt like it was closing in. You can prove that? No. If I could, he'd be dead already. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. But I know. The same way I know he's trying to use you against me now. The same way I know that if I show any weakness, any hesitation, he'll do to you what he did to her. Adrian, I should let you go, should fire you, pay you off, make sure you're far away from this war before it consumes you. He crossed to her, hands fisting at his sides like he was fighting the urge to touch her. But I can't. I'm too selfish, too damaged, too fucking desperate for something real in this world of lies and blood. Lena's throat burned. I'm not going anywhere. You should. But I'm not. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. You don't get to make that choice for me. I'm a grown woman who understands exactly what she's walking into. You don't understand. You can't possibly understand what he's capable of. Then tell me. Stop protecting me from the truth and just tell me. Her hands found his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath expensive fabric. You want me to be yours? Then trust me enough to see all of it. The good, the bad, the parts you think will make me run. Adrian stared at her, something breaking behind his eyes. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. My father was a monster, he said against her hair. He ran drugs, weapons, money. He hurt people for profit and pleasure. When I was 16, I watched him beat a man to death in our basement because the guy had skimmed $50 from a collection. $50. And my father killed him like it was nothing. Lena held him tighter. I swore I'd be different, that I'd take what he built and make it legitimate. Clean money, legal businesses, no blood on my hands. His voice cracked. But you can't wash away that kind of legacy. It stains everything, and everyone who's tried to get close to me has paid the price. I'm not Elena. No, you're stronger, braver, more stubborn than she ever was. He pulled back just enough to see her face. But that won't stop Victor from trying to hurt you. It won't stop the dozen other enemies circling like sharks. All it does is make me more terrified of losing you. Then don't lose me. Fight for me. Lena's hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. You said I was yours. Prove it. Not by locking me away or making decisions for me, but by trusting that I'm strong enough to stand beside you. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking you to let me choose. To stop seeing me as something fragile that needs protecting and start seeing me as a partner. She kissed him softly. I'm asking you to fight, Adrian. With me. Not for me. He kissed her back with a desperation that bordered on violence, hands tangling in her hair, pulling her flush against him. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were blazing. Okay, he said roughly. Okay, but if I'm bringing you into this, really into this, you need to understand the rules. You do what I say when it comes to security. No arguments, no negotiations. James and Robert aren't suggestions, they're requirements. Understood? Understood. And if something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. If something happens to me, he continued, there's an envelope in the safe behind that painting. He gestured to an abstract piece on the wall. Inside are instructions, account numbers, contacts, everything you need to disappear completely. You take it, and you run, and you don't look back. Adrian, promise me. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that running wasn't in her nature, that she wouldn't abandon him even if the world burned down around them. But the fear in his eyes stopped her. I promise, she whispered. He kissed her forehead, lingering there. I'm going to end this. Victor, the leak, all of it. And when I do, we're going to have a normal life. Boring dinners, quiet weekends, fights about whose turn it is to do the dishes. That sounds nice. It sounds impossible, but I'm going to make it happen anyway. He stepped back, straightening his tie. Come on, I'm taking you home. I have my own apartment. Not tonight. Tonight you're staying at my place, where I have actual security instead of a doorman who spends half his shift on his phone. Adrian grabbed his jacket. Don't argue. She wasn't going to. The idea of being alone in her apartment after Victor's call made her skin crawl. They rode the elevator down in silence, James following at a discreet distance. The parking garage was nearly empty, their footsteps echoing off concrete. Adrian's hand found the small of her back, guiding her toward a black sedan that definitely wasn't the company car. The drive to his building took 20 minutes through traffic that never seemed to sleep. Adrian lived in a high-rise in Tribeca, all glass and steel, and the kind of security that required 3 separate forms of ID to get past the lobby. His apartment was on the top floor, a sprawling penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and artwork that probably cost more than most people's houses. It should have felt cold, sterile. Instead, it felt like him, controlled, powerful, hiding depths most people would never see. Make yourself comfortable, Adrian said, loosening his tie. I need to make some calls. There's wine in the kitchen, food in the fridge. If you're still hungry. Lena wandered while he disappeared into what she assumed was a home office. The living room opened onto a terrace with views that made her breath catch. The kitchen was all marble and stainless steel, immaculate in a way that suggested it rarely got used. The bedroom. She paused in the doorway. King-sized bed, dark sheets, more windows, everything expensive and tasteful and somehow lonely despite the luxury. You can sleep there if you want. She turned to find Adrian leaning against the doorframe, jacket discarded, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. Where will you sleep? She asked. Wherever you want me to. She held out her hand. He crossed to her, taking it, letting her pull him into the room. They undressed slowly this time, no desperate urgency. Just the quiet intimacy of skin against skin, breath mingling, hearts finding the same rhythm. When he moved inside her, it felt different than Chicago. Less frantic, more deliberate, like he was memorizing every sound she made, every way she responded to his touch. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. Tell me about her, Lena said quietly. Elena. Adrian was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "She was kind. Too kind for someone like me. She worked at a nonprofit, spent her weekends volunteering at soup kitchens, believed people were fundamentally good." His voice was rough with old grief. "I tried to keep her separate from my world. Thought if I compartmentalized enough, built enough walls between who I was at work and who I was with her, she'd be safe. But she wasn't. No. Because Victor knew exactly how to hurt me. He found the one soft place I had left and he destroyed it." Adrian's arm tightened around her. "I won't make that mistake again." "What mistake?" "Thinking I can keep you separate. Thinking I can protect you by pretending you're not part of this." He shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. "You want to stand beside me? Then you need to see it all. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with my family. The real family. Not the business partners or the board members. The people who knew my father, who helped him build his empire, who still expect me to honor certain traditions." Lena's stomach tightened. "Why?" "Because I need their support to take down Victor, and because they need to meet you." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "They need to understand that you're under my protection, that anyone who touches you answers to me, and everyone who stands behind me." "That sounds terrifying." "It will be. These aren't corporate executives, Lena. They're soldiers, killers, men who've survived in a world that doesn't forgive weakness." He paused. "But they're also loyal, and once they accept you as mine, they'll die before they let anyone hurt you." "And if they don't accept me?" "They will, because I'll make it very clear what the alternative is." His smile was cold, dangerous. "I'm still a Moretti. That name still carries weight. They'll fall in line or they'll find out what happens when they don't." Sleep came slowly, her mind churning with everything she'd learned. Victor's call, Elena's death, the family meeting tomorrow, the war that was coming whether she was ready for it or not. But wrapped in Adrian's arms, listening to his steady heartbeat, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt chosen. Morning came too fast. Adrian was already awake when she opened her eyes, standing by the window with his phone, speaking rapid Italian in a tone that made it clear he was giving orders rather than taking them. He ended the call and turned to find her watching. "Coffee's in the kitchen, fresh clothes in the guest room closet. I had someone bring things over last night." He crossed to the bed, kissing her forehead. "We leave in an hour. Wear something that makes you look like you belong next to me." "What does that mean?" "It means expensive, confident, untouchable." His smile was wry. "Everything you already are, just dress to prove it." The guest room closet held enough designer clothes to outfit a small boutique. Lena chose a charcoal pantsuit with a silk blouse the color of fresh blood, paired it with heels that added 3 inches to her height. She twisted her hair into a severe knot, applied makeup with a careful hand, and stared at her reflection. She looked dangerous. She looked like she could stand next to Adrian Moretti and not flinch. The meeting was in Brooklyn, at a restaurant that had been closed for a private event. Adrian's hand was steady on the small of her back as they walked in, James and Robert flanking them like shadows. 7 men sat around a large table, ranging in age from mid-30s to late 60s. They all stood when Adrian entered, and the weight of their collective attention made Lena's skin prickle. "Gentlemen," Adrian said smoothly, "thank you for coming. I'd like you to meet Lena Hayes." The oldest man, gray-haired, scarred, with eyes that had seen too much, stepped forward. "Miss Hayes, I'm Sal Russo. I knew Adrian's father." "Mr. Russo." Lena shook his hand, keeping her grip firm. "Please, sit." Sal gestured to the table. "We have much to discuss." What followed was 3 hours of careful negotiation disguised as conversation. Adrian laid out his plans for dealing with Victor, the evidence Paul had provided, the alliances he'd built. The men listened, asked pointed questions, pushed back on strategies they thought were too risky. And through it all, Lena sat beside Adrian, saying nothing but missing nothing. She saw the way they tested him, looking for weakness. Saw the way they watched her, trying to determine if she was a liability or an asset. Saw the moment, she couldn't pinpoint exactly when, that their assessment shifted from suspicious to accepting. By the time lunch was served, the tension had eased. "You've chosen well," Sal said to Adrian, his gaze on Lena. "She has steel in her spine." "I know." Adrian replied. But steel can break if you're not careful. Sal's expression was serious. Victor won't play fair. He'll come at her with everything he has. Let him try. Adrian's hand found Lena's under the table, squeezing gently. He'll find out that protecting what's mine is something I'm very good at. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises of support. As they walked back to the car, Lena finally let herself breathe. You did well, Adrian said quietly. I didn't do anything. Exactly. You let them see you without performing. That's rarer than you think. He opened the car door for her. They'll spread the word. By tonight, everyone who matters will know that Lena Hayes is under Moretti protection. And Victor? Victor will make his move, soon. Adrian slid into the seat beside her. But when he does, we'll be ready. The war was coming. Lena could feel it in the air, taste it like copper on her tongue, and she'd just chosen her side. Victor's move came 48 hours later, at the charity gala Adrian had been planning to attend for months. The event was black tie, held at the Metropolitan Museum. 500 of New York's wealthiest and most powerful gathered under vaulted ceilings to write checks and pretend they cared about art preservation. Adrian had bought a table months ago. Good optics, better networking, the kind of visibility that reminded everyone he'd moved beyond his father's shadow into legitimate wealth. Lena stood in front of the mirror in Adrian's penthouse, adjusting the gown he'd had delivered that afternoon. It was midnight blue, silk that clung to every curve before cascading to the floor. The back was cut dangerously low, the neckline just modest enough to avoid scandal. She looked like she belonged in his world. The thought should have pleased her. Instead, it made her stomach twist. You're thinking too loud, Adrian said from the doorway. She met his eyes in the mirror. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of some old Hollywood film, devastating and untouchable in equal measure. I'm thinking about Victor, she admitted, about what happens when he sees us together publicly. He already knows we're together. This just makes it official. Adrian crossed to her, fastening a diamond necklace around her throat. Which is exactly what I want. Let him see that I'm not hiding you. Let him see that I'm not afraid. But you are afraid. His hand stilled on her shoulders, terrified. But fear doesn't change what needs to happen. The necklace settled against her collarbone, cold and heavy. She touched it gently, watching light scatter across the stones. This is too much, she said. It's armor. Same as the dress, same as the security team waiting downstairs. His lips brushed her temple. You're walking into a room full of predators tonight. I need them to see you as untouchable. I'm not untouchable. No, but they don't need to know that. He turned her to face him, his expression serious. Listen to me. Tonight, Victor might try to approach you. He might try to pull you aside for a conversation, offer you a drink, make it seem casual and harmless. Whatever he does, you don't go anywhere with him. You stay visible, stay surrounded by people, and you stay close to me. You think he'd try something at a public event? I think he's desperate enough to try anything. Adrian's jaw tightened. Paul's files hit the news this morning. Federal investigators are already asking questions about shell companies and offshore accounts. Victor's empire is crumbling, which makes him more dangerous than ever. Lena's breath caught. You leaked Paul's information. I made sure it reached the right people. His smile was cold. Victor wanted a war. I'm giving him one he can't win. The gala was everything Lena expected, and worse. Chandeliers dripping crystal, champagne flowing like water, women in gowns that cost more than most people's cars. She walked in on Adrian's arm, very aware of the eyes tracking their entrance, the whispers that followed in their wake. Adrian Moretti had brought a date. Adrian Moretti, who never brought dates to public events, who'd been photographed alone for years, who'd built walls so high most people had stopped trying to scale them. The speculation was instant and hungry. Smile, Adrian murmured against her ear. Let them wonder. She smiled, letting him guide her through the crowd. People approached in waves, business associates, old family friends, social climbers angling for introductions. Adrian handled them all with practiced ease, his hand never leaving the small of her back. Adrian Moretti, a woman's voice called out, as I live and breathe. They turned to find a striking brunette in a scarlet gown, champagne glass in hand, smile sharp as broken glass. "Vivian," Adrian said neutrally, "you look well. And you look deliciously domestic." Vivian's gaze raked over Lena with undisguised curiosity. "Going to introduce me to your companion, or are we pretending this is business?" "Lena Hayes, Vivian Chen. Vivian runs the Chen Foundation." "Pleasure," Lena said, extending her hand. Vivian's handshake was brief, assessing. "Hayes, that name sounds familiar. I work for Adrian." "Ah, how modern of him." Vivian's smile widened. "Tell me, dear, how does one go from assistant to arm candy? I'm always looking for career advancement tips." The barb landed exactly as intended. Lena felt Adrian tense beside her, but she kept her expression smooth. "I'd say the same way one goes from new money to old pretensions," Lena replied sweetly, careful positioning and a willingness to play the part. Vivian's eyes flashed. "Charming. Adrian, wherever did you find her?" "She found me." Adrian's tone was final, dismissive. "If you'll excuse us, Vivian." He steered Lena away before the other woman could respond. "Sorry about that," Adrian said quietly. "Vivian and I have history." "What kind of history?" "The boring kind. A few dates years ago, mutual realization that we were better as strategic allies than romantic partners." His hand squeezed her waist. "She's harmless. Mostly." They made their way through the crowd, stopping to chat with various power players. A tech billionaire interested in Moretti Capital's portfolio, a councilwoman angling for campaign donations, a museum board member gushing about the new acquisitions. Lena played her part perfectly, charming but not chatty, interested but not eager, always deferring to Adrian while making it clear she wasn't just decoration. She was good at this, she realized. The performance, the careful dance of saying nothing while communicating everything. Maybe she'd been training for this world her whole life without knowing it. "You're doing beautifully," Adrian murmured as they moved toward their table. "I'm exhausted. 2 more hours. Then we can leave." He pulled out her chair. "I need to make the rounds, shake some hands, remind people why they donate to causes I support. Stay here, have some champagne, enjoy the view." "Adrian, James is by the east entrance. Robert's covering the terrace. You're not alone." He kissed her forehead. "I'll be back in 15 minutes." He disappeared into the crowd, leaving her at a table with 6 strangers who looked at her with varying degrees of curiosity and judgment. Lena sipped champagne she didn't want and made small talk she didn't care about, counting down the minutes. At minute 12, a man approached the table. Tall, broad-shouldered, expensive suit, cold smile. Victor Castellano. Lena's blood went ice cold. "Miss Hayes," he said smoothly, "we meet at last. May I sit?" Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to find James, to run, but running would show weakness, and weakness in this world was blood in the water. "Mr. Castellano," she said calmly, "I don't think that's a good idea." "No? I promise I don't bite." He sat anyway, claiming the chair beside her. "Beautiful event, isn't it? Though I have to say the company's better than the art." "If you're trying to charm me, it's not working." "I'm not trying to charm you. I'm trying to save you." Victor leaned closer, voice dropping. "Do you know what Adrian did to the last person who betrayed him?" "I'm not interested in your stories." "You should be." "Her name was Maria. She worked for him, just like you. Loyal, dedicated, thought she was special." His smile was cruel. "Then she made a mistake. Talked to the wrong person, shared information she shouldn't have. Adrian found out." Lena's hands clenched in her lap. "I'm sure there's a point to this. The point is that Maria disappeared, vanished without a trace. No body, no evidence, just gone." Victor's eyes bored into hers. "That's what happens to people who get too close to Adrian Moretti. They either die or they disappear. Elena died. Maria disappeared. What do you think happens to you when he's done playing house?" "I think you're desperate." Lena met his gaze steadily. "I think your empire is falling apart and you're scrambling for leverage wherever you can find it. But I'm not leverage, Mr. Castellano. I'm not a pawn you can use against him." "Everyone's a pawn. Some people just don't realize it until they're being sacrificed." Victor stood, buttoning his jacket. "When you figure out what you really are to him, remember this conversation. Remember that I offered you a way out." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Lena sat frozen, heart hammering, Victor's words echoing in her head. Maria. Another woman. Another person who'd gotten close to Adrian and paid the price. Was he telling the truth? Or was it manipulation, a carefully constructed lie designed to drive a wedge between her and Adrian? "You okay?" She jumped, turning to find Marcus sliding into the seat Victor had vacated. "Fine," she managed. "Just tired." "I saw Victor talking to you. What did he want?" "To plant doubt, to make me question everything." She took a shaky sip of champagne. "Did it work?" "I honestly can't tell anymore." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I've worked for Adrian for 6 years. In that time, I've seen him be ruthless, cold, unforgiving. I've also seen him rebuild businesses that were supposed to fail, give second chances to people who didn't deserve them, and carry the weight of his father's sins like they were his own." He paused. "He's not perfect, but he's not the monster Victor wants you to believe he is." "What about Maria?" Marcus's expression shifted. Surprise, then understanding, then something that looked like anger. "Victor told you about Maria? Should he not have?" Maria was an accountant who embezzled $3 million from Moretti Capital and fled to the Cayman Islands. Adrian didn't make her disappear. She disappeared herself after stealing from him. Marcus leaned forward. "Victor twists the truth into weapons. It's what he does. Don't let him get in your head." Adrian returned moments later, his eyes immediately finding Lena's face. Whatever he saw there made his expression harden. "What happened?" "Victor paid me a visit," she said quietly. Adrian's jaw clenched. "What did he say?" "Nothing I'm going to repeat here." She stood, legs unsteady. "Can we go, please?" "Absolutely." He took her hand, already pulling her toward the exit. They made it to the lobby before Victor's voice rang out behind them. "Leaving so soon, Adrian? The night's just getting started." Adrian turned slowly, positioning himself between Lena and Victor. "Say what you need to say, Victor. Then get out of my way." "I just wanted to congratulate you. The Bellamy acquisition, the federal investigation into my business practices, the way you've turned my own family against me." Victor's smile was poisonous. "Very impressive. You've learned well from your father." "My father was a monster. I'm nothing like him." "No? You destroy your enemies. You take what you want without asking. You leave bodies in your wake." Victor stepped closer. "The only difference between you and him is that you wear better suits and pay better lawyers. The difference is that I'm still standing and he's in the ground." Adrian's voice was cold, final. "Just like you'll be if you don't walk away. Now." Victor's eyes flicked to Lena. "Does she know what you really are? Does she know about the deals you make in the dark? The alliances that keep your empire running, the blood on the money you use to buy her pretty dresses?" "She knows everything she needs to know." "Does she know about Elena? About how you got her killed by dragging her into this world?" Adrian moved so fast Lena barely saw it. One moment he was standing still, the next his hand was fisted in Victor's collar, slamming the other man against the marble wall hard enough to rattle teeth. "Say her name again," Adrian said softly, dangerously. "I dare you." Security was moving toward them, but James intercepted, his massive frame blocking their approach. The lobby had gone silent, every eye on the confrontation. Victor laughed, even with Adrian's fist cutting off his air. "There he is, Giovanni Moretti's son. All that civility is just paint over rot, isn't it?" Adrian released him with a shove. "Stay away from Lena. Stay away from my business. Stay away from me. This is your only warning." "Or what? You'll kill me like you killed everyone else who got in your way?" "No." Adrian's smile was terrifying. "I'll destroy you legally, publicly, so thoroughly that your name becomes a cautionary tale. And then when you're broken and bankrupt and begging for mercy, I'll walk away and let the world forget you ever existed." He straightened his bow tie. "That's the difference between my father and me. He would have put a bullet in your head. I'm going to do something worse. I'm going to make you irrelevant." He took Lena's hand and walked out, leaving Victor seething against the wall. The car was waiting. Adrian handed her into the back seat, his movements controlled despite the rage she could feel radiating off him in waves. James slid into the driver's seat, and they pulled away from the museum in silence. I'm sorry, Adrian said finally. I shouldn't have let him bait me like that. He brought up Elena deliberately. He wanted you to lose control. I know, but I played right into it anyway. Adrian scrubbed a hand over his face. Everyone in that room saw me threaten him. By tomorrow, it'll be all over the society pages. Moretti airs violent outburst. Questions about his stability. Speculation about whether he's too much like his father after all. You were defending me. I was proving his point. Adrian's voice was bitter. That under all the polish and legitimacy, I'm still my father's son, still capable of violence when pushed. Lena took his hand, lacing their fingers together. You didn't hurt him. You could have, but you didn't. That's the difference Victor can't see. The difference doesn't matter if no one else can see it either. I see it. He looked at her, something breaking in his expression. Do you? After everything he said, everything he implied, do you still see me as anything other than what I am? What are you? Damaged, dangerous. A man who's loved exactly 2 women in his life and gotten one of them killed. His throat worked. A man who's about to get the second one killed because he's too selfish to let her go. Adrian, stop. Maria was real, Lena. She did work for me. And yes, she embezzled money and fled the country. But before that, she was also someone I trusted. Someone I brought into my world thinking I could protect her. And she ended up so afraid of the danger surrounding me that she stole everything she could and ran. His hands fisted. So Victor wasn't entirely lying. I do have a pattern. People who get closer to me either die or disappear, and you're next in line. The car pulled up to Adrian's building. James opened the door, but neither of them moved. I'm not Maria, Lena said quietly, and I'm not Elena. I'm not running, and I'm not going to break. You need to stop treating me like I'm made of glass. You're not glass, you're flesh and blood, and everything Victor would love to destroy to get to me. Then let him try. She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm not afraid of him, I'm not afraid of this world. The only thing I'm afraid of is you deciding I can't handle it and pushing me away to protect me. Maybe I should. But you won't, because you need me as much as I need you. She kissed him softly. Stop trying to save me from yourself, Adrian. It's not going to work. They rode the elevator to his penthouse in silence, hands clasped, the weight of the evening pressing down on them. Inside, Adrian poured them both whiskey, neat, and they stood by the windows looking out at the city. Tell me about Elena, Lena said. The real story. Not Victor's version. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he said, I met her at a fundraiser. She was working for a children's hospital, trying to convince rich people to donate. She had this way of making you feel like giving away money was the most important thing you could do. He smiled faintly. I wrote her a check for $500,000 just to see her smile. What was she like? Kind, genuinely painfully kind. She saw good in everyone, even people who didn't deserve it, even me. He took a drink. We dated for a year before I proposed. I thought I could keep her separate from the ugly parts of my life. I had security, I was careful about what I told her. I made sure she never met the Sals and Marcos of my world. But Victor found her anyway. Victor found her because someone in my organization told him about her. Someone I trusted betrayed me to curry favor with him. Adrian's voice went flat. Elena died 3 days before our wedding. Hit and run on the FDR. The driver was never found, the car was never recovered, and the police closed the case as an unfortunate accident. But you knew. I knew. Just like I knew that killing Victor in retaliation would start a war that would destroy everything my father had built. So I waited. I planned. I spent 4 years building alliances, gathering evidence, positioning myself to take him down the right way. He looked at her. And then you walked into my office and fixed my tie, and suddenly waiting felt impossible. Because of me? Because you reminded me what it felt like to want something besides revenge. His hand found her face. Victor's right about one thing. I am my father's son, but you make me want to be something better. Someone who builds instead of destroys. Someone who chooses love over hate. Then choose it, Lena whispered. Choose me. Choose us. Choose a future that isn't defined by what your father was or what Victor wants you to be. He kissed her desperately, like she was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. They made love against the windows, the city watching, neither of them caring who saw. It was frantic and claiming and raw, two people trying to anchor themselves to something real in a world built on lies. Afterward, wrapped in sheets, Lena traced the scar on Adrian's ribs she'd noticed before but never asked about. "My father," he said without her needing to ask. "I was 17. I questioned one of his decisions in front of his associates. He waited until they left, then used his belt buckle to teach me about respect." "Adrian, it's fine, ancient history." But his voice said it wasn't fine at all. "The scar's a reminder of what I came from, of what I refuse to become." "You're nothing like him." "I want to believe that. Some days I even do." He pulled her closer. "But then Victor throws his name in my face, and I wonder if I'm just fooling myself. If all the legitimate businesses and clean money are just window dressing over the same rot." "They're not. You're not." Lena kissed the scar gently. "You're the man who gave Paul Castellano a new life, instead of just using him for information. You're the man who rebuilt struggling businesses instead of gutting them for parts. You're the man who keeps trying to be better even when everyone expects you to be worse. You see me through rose-colored glasses. I see you clearly, which is why I know you're going to win this war with Victor. Not because you're more ruthless or more violent, but because you're willing to play a longer game, one that ends with him destroyed and you still standing with clean hands." Adrian was quiet, his fingers tracing patterns on her spine. Finally, he said, "I got intel this afternoon. Victor's planning something for Friday. Don't know what yet, but it's big, coordinated. He's pulling in favors from everyone he knows. The press conference, for Bellamy. That's what I'm thinking. Public venue, lots of media, maximum exposure. If he's going to make a statement, that's when he'll do it." Adrian's jaw tightened, "Which means we need to be ready." "What do you need me to do?" "Stay safe, stay visible, and trust me to handle this." He met her eyes. "Can you do that?" She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could help, that she was strong enough to stand beside him in whatever was coming. But she also knew that sometimes trust meant letting someone protect you, even when every instinct screamed to fight your own battles. "I trust you," she said. "Good, because Friday's going to change everything." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Adrian met with lawyers, security teams, media consultants. He coordinated with federal investigators about Victor's offshore accounts. He reached out to every ally he had, calling in favors, building a coalition strong enough to weather whatever storm was coming. Lena watched him work, watched him transform from the man who made love to her in the dark into the cold, calculating strategist who'd built an empire. The duality should have frightened her. Instead, it made her love him more. He was both. The tender and the ruthless. The broken and the whole. The man haunted by his father's ghost and the man determined to be better. And he was hers. Thursday night, the night before the press conference, Adrian came home late. Lena was waiting, wearing one of his shirts, feet tucked under her on the couch. "It's ready," he said, loosening his tie. "Everything's in place. Tomorrow Victor's empire burns and mine survives. Simple as that." "Nothing about this is simple." "No, but it's necessary." He sank onto the couch beside her, suddenly looking exhausted. "I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Tomorrow, if things go wrong, if Victor makes a move I didn't anticipate, you run. You take the envelope from the safe, you get in the car James will have waiting, and you disappear. No hesitation, no looking back." "Adrian, promise me, Lena, because I can handle losing everything else. My business, my reputation, even my life. But I can't handle losing you." His voice cracked. "So promise me you'll run if you have to." She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she'd never run, never leave him, never abandon him to face the consequences alone. But the fear in his eyes stopped her. "I promise," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. I know 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't say it. But I love you, Lena Hayes, and if tomorrow's my last chance to tell you, I needed you to know." Tears burned her eyes. "I love you too." They didn't sleep that night. They talked until dawn, sharing stories and secrets and fears. building something real in the hours before reality came crashing back. When the sun finally rose over Manhattan, they were still tangled together, holding on like their grip alone could keep the world at bay. But the world was coming whether they were ready or not, and Victor Castellano was bringing war. The press conference was scheduled for 11 a.m. at the Moretti Capital headquarters, in the gleaming conference room where Adrian had first told Lena about the dangers of his world. Now, standing in front of the mirror in his office, adjusting the same navy tie she'd fixed on her first day, Lena felt the weight of everything that had happened since that moment. 3 weeks. That's all it had been. 3 weeks since she'd walked into this building invisible and desperate. 3 weeks since Adrian Moretti had looked at her like she was something worth keeping. 3 weeks that had changed everything. "You don't have to be here," Adrian said, coming up behind her. His hand settled on her shoulders, warm and steady. "You could wait upstairs. Let me handle this." "We're past that." She met his eyes in the mirror. "Whatever happens today, we face it together." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "James and Robert will be in the room. Sal's people are covering the exits. Security's been tripled. Victor won't get within 50 feet of you." "You think he'll come?" "I think he can't afford not to. This press conference announces the Bellamy acquisition, exposes his financial crimes, and positions me as the legitimate businessman who cleaned up the industry." Adrian's smile was cold. "It destroys him publicly. He has to try something." "What if it's something you can't predict?" "Then I adapt. I've been doing this my whole life, Lena, anticipating threats, planning for contingencies, staying 3 steps ahead of people who want me dead." He turned her to face him. "Victor's desperate, which makes him dangerous. But desperation also makes people sloppy. He'll make a mistake, and when he does, I'll be ready." A knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus stuck his head in, his expression tense. "Media's arriving. We're set up and ready to go. Investors are in the front row, board members behind them. I put Lena's seat next to mine, off to the side but visible." "Good." Adrian straightened his cuffs. "Any sign of Victor?" "Not yet, but half his known associates are in the lobby trying to get press credentials." Marcus's eyes flicked to Lena. "Security's keeping them contained, but they're making noise about freedom of press and public interest." "Let them make noise. They're not getting in." Adrian grabbed his notes from the desk. 15 minutes. Let's end this." The conference room had been transformed into something that looked like a political rally. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters filled the center seats, investors and board members flanked the sides. The podium stood at the front, Moretti Capital's logo backlit and imposing. Lena took her seat next to Marcus, very aware of the eyes tracking her movement. She'd chosen her outfit carefully that morning. A dove gray suit, professional but not severe, paired with the diamond necklace Adrian had given her. A statement without words. She belonged here, beside him, part of his world. Adrian stood at the podium, commanding the room without saying a word. When he finally spoke, his voice carried authority that silenced every whisper. "Thank you all for coming. Today marks a significant milestone for Moretti Capital and for the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. After months of negotiation, I'm pleased to announce the successful acquisition of Bellamy Pharmaceuticals." Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Adrian continued, outlining the terms of the deal, the projected revenue, the plans for restructuring and growth. He spoke about innovation, accessibility, bringing life-saving medications to underserved markets. He sounded like exactly what he'd spent years becoming, a legitimate businessman with a vision for the future. Then he shifted gears. "This acquisition also represents something larger, a commitment to transparency and ethical business practices in an industry that has, unfortunately, been plagued by corruption." Adrian's gaze swept the room. "Which is why I've also been working closely with federal investigators to expose fraudulent financial practices that have operated in the shadows for too long." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Lena saw several reporters lean forward, sensing blood in the water. Over the past month, evidence has come to light regarding shell companies, offshore accounts, and systematic money laundering designed to hide illegal profits and evade taxes. This evidence has been turned over to the appropriate authorities, and I'm confident that justice will be served. "Are you referring to Victor Castellano?" a reporter called out. Adrian's expression didn't change. "I'm referring to anyone who's chosen to operate outside the law, Names and specifics are a matter for federal prosecutors, not public speculation. But Castellano's been your primary competitor for the Bellamy acquisition. Mr. Castellano is welcome to compete for business through legal means, just like everyone else in this industry. Adrian's tone was ice. What he's not welcome to do is use criminal enterprises to fund legitimate acquisitions. That ends now. The room exploded with questions. Adrian fielded them smoothly, never confirming Victor's involvement directly, but making it clear enough that every reporter in the room knew exactly who he was talking about. It was masterful, destroying Victor's reputation without saying his name enough times to invite a lawsuit. Lena watched, fascinated and slightly terrified by how good Adrian was at this. The careful words, the strategic pauses, the way he controlled the narrative without appearing to try. He was winning. She could feel it, could see it in the reporters' faces, the investors' nodding heads, the board members' satisfied expressions. Victor's empire was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. That's when the fire alarm went off. The piercing shriek cut through the room like a blade. People jumped, confused, looking around for smoke or flames. Adrian's eyes immediately found Lena's across the crowd, and she saw the calculation there, assessing, determining whether this was real or manufactured. "Everybody stay calm," Adrian said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Exit the building in an orderly fashion. This is likely a false alarm, but we're not taking chances." Security moved immediately, directing people toward the exits. Marcus grabbed Lena's arm, pulling her toward the side door. "Stay close," he said urgently. But before they could reach the door, it burst open and Victor Castellano walked through, flanked by 3 men Lena didn't recognize. The room went silent. Even the fire alarm seemed to fade into background noise. "Adrian," Victor said, his smile vicious. "Funny running into you here, at your own press conference, about your own illegal business practices." Adrian stepped down from the podium, moving to position himself between Victor and Lena. "You need to leave. Now." "Do I? Because I have some questions about this acquisition, about how you obtained insider information about the FDA investigation, about how you convinced my own family to betray me." Victor pulled out a folder, waving it. "See, I've been doing some investigating of my own, and what I found is very interesting. Whatever you think you have, it's fabricated." "Is it? Because these documents show wire transfers from Moretti Capital to Paul Castellano's offshore accounts, payments made before he handed over my financial records." Victor's eyes gleamed. "That's bribery, Adrian. That's conspiracy. That's you breaking the same laws you're so sanctimoniously pretending to uphold." Lena's stomach dropped. She looked at Adrian, searching his face for denial, for shock, for anything that said Victor was lying. But Adrian's expression was carved from stone. "Those transfers were legitimate consulting fees," he said coldly. "For what consultation? How to betray family? How to destroy a competitor using illegal means?" Victor stepped closer. "You're just like your father. You dress it up in expensive suits and legal paperwork, but underneath, you're the same monster. You just hide it better. The difference is, I'm still standing, and you're not." Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. "Everything I've done has been within the law. Everything you've done has been criminal. And in about 5 minutes, federal agents are going to walk through that door with a warrant for your arrest." Victor laughed. "You think I didn't plan for that? You think I walked in here without insurance?" He nodded to one of his men, who immediately moved toward Lena. Marcus tried to intercept, but another of Victor's men blocked him. James and Robert were pushing through the crowd, but too far away to reach her in time. The man grabbed Lena's arm, yanking her away from Marcus. "Let her go," Adrian said, his voice like death. "No, see, I've learned from watching you, Adrian. You care about this one, more than you cared about Elena, even. I can see it in your eyes." Victor pulled a gun from his jacket, casual as pulling out a phone. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off the federal investigation. You're going to return Paul's files. You're going to issue a public apology for spreading false information about my business practices. And then, maybe, I'll let you keep her." The room erupted in screams. People dove for cover. Cameras kept rolling, capturing everything. Adrian didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there, staring at Victor with an expression that made Lena's blood run cold. "You won't shoot her," he said calmly. Won't I? No. Because the moment you do, you lose your leverage. And the moment you lose your leverage, every person in this room who's loyal to me will tear you apart. Adrian took a step forward. But more importantly, you won't shoot her because you're not actually a killer, Victor. You hire killers. You pay other people to do your dirty work because you're too weak to do it yourself. Victor's hand tightened on the gun. You want to test that theory? Yes, because I know something you don't. Adrian smiled, cold and terrible. That gun isn't loaded. Victor's expression flickered, just for a second, just enough to show doubt. And in that second, everything happened at once. James tackled the man holding Lena, slamming him into the wall. Robert disarmed another of Victor's men with brutal efficiency. Adrian moved like lightning, closing the distance between himself and Victor, his hand clamping around the gun. The struggle was brief and vicious. Adrian twisted Victor's wrist until something cracked and the gun clattered to the floor. Then he drove his fist into Victor's face with enough force to snap the other man's head back. Victor went down hard, blood streaming from his nose. Adrian stood over him, breathing hard, knuckles split and bleeding. You're right about one thing, Adrian said quietly. I am my father's son. I learned everything he taught me about power and fear and how to destroy your enemies. He crouched down, getting eye level with Victor. But unlike him, I know when to stop. I know the difference between justice and revenge. And I know that destroying you legally is so much more satisfying than putting a bullet in your head. Federal agents burst through the doors, weapons drawn, voices shouting orders. They surrounded Victor and his men, pulling them to their feet, reading them their rights. An agent approached Adrian, showing a badge. Mr. Moretti, we'll need your statement. Of course, but first, Adrian turned, his eyes finding Lena in the chaos. She was standing with Marcus, shaking but unhurt, James hovering protectively nearby. Adrian crossed to her in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms. You okay? He asked roughly. I'm fine. You knew the gun wasn't loaded? I suspected. Victor's too careful to bring a loaded weapon into a building with this much security. He was bluffing. Adrian pulled back to look at her. But if I'd been wrong, You weren't. She cupped his face, feeling the tension vibrating through him. You weren't wrong. This time, but next time. There won't be a next time. Victor's done. You won. She kissed him softly. It's over. Adrian held her close, his forehead resting against hers. Not quite yet. The aftermath took hours. Statements to the FBI. Interviews with reporters who'd captured everything on camera. Calls from investors and board members, all reassuring Adrian of their continued support. The Bellamy acquisition was still solid. The press conference, despite the dramatic ending, had achieved exactly what Adrian wanted. Victor Castellano was arrested on charges of money laundering, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping. His empire was being dismantled piece by piece, assets frozen, offshore accounts seized. The investigation would take months, maybe years, but the outcome was already certain. Victor was finished. By the time Adrian and Lena made it back to the penthouse, it was after midnight. They were both exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee and the bone-deep relief of having survived. I need to tell you something, Adrian said, pouring them both whiskey. Lena took the glass, settling onto the couch. What? The transfers Victor mentioned, the ones to Paul's offshore accounts. Adrian sat beside her, his expression serious. They were real. I did pay him, not for the files. Those he gave me because he wanted out. But I paid him anyway because I wanted to make sure he could disappear completely, start a new life, be free of his family. That's not bribery, that's kindness. The law might not see it that way. If federal prosecutors decide to dig into it, they won't, because Paul will testify that you helped him escape a criminal organization, that you protected a witness who was cooperating with authorities. Lena set down her glass. You're not your father, Adrian. Even when you're playing the game, you're playing it with more honor than anyone else in this world. I don't feel honorable. I feel like I almost got you killed. You saved me. Again. She moved closer, straddling his lap, her hands framing his face. You've been saving me since the moment we met. Saving me from invisibility, from fear, from a life that was too small for everything I wanted to become. You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to do it. No. You gave me permission to be more than I thought I could be. You saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself." She kissed him gently. "You made me brave." His arms tightened around her. "What happens now?" "Now, we live. We build something real. We prove that two broken people can make something whole." She smiled. "And maybe we take a vacation, somewhere without federal investigations or hostile takeovers or people trying to kill us." Adrian laughed, the sound rough but genuine. "Where would we go?" "I don't know. Somewhere with beaches and terrible tourist drinks with umbrellas in them. Somewhere we can just be Adrian and Lena, not Moretti and his assistant." I like the sound of that. He kissed her thoroughly, taking his time. "But first there's something I need to do." He stood, carrying her with him, and walked to his home office. Set her down gently and opened the safe behind the painting. From inside, he pulled out a small velvet box. Lena's breath caught. "Before you panic," Adrian said quickly, "this isn't what you think. Not yet, anyway. I'm not proposing. We're nowhere near ready for that." He opened the box, revealing a delicate ring, a simple band with a single diamond, elegant and understated. "But I am asking you to stay, to build this life with me, to be my partner in every sense of the word, not just my assistant or my girlfriend or whatever label makes sense to everyone else." "Adrian, I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other in the ways that normal couples do. But I also know that I love you, that I trust you, that I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night for the rest of my life." He took her hand. "So this is a promise that I'm all in, that I choose you every day no matter what comes. And when we're ready, when you're ready, I'll ask you properly, with a better ring and a better speech and probably a better plan." Lena's eyes burned with tears. "It's perfect." "The ring?" "All of it. You, this, us." She held out her hand. "Yes, to all of it. To building a life together, to being your partner, to choosing each other every single day." He slid the ring onto her finger, right hand, not left, because this wasn't an engagement but something equally binding, a promise, a commitment, a declaration that they were in this together, whatever this became. They made love slowly that night, savoring each touch, each whispered word. No desperate urgency, no fear of the future, just two people learning each other's bodies like maps to a home they were building together. The next morning, Adrian announced that Lena would be transitioning from executive assistant to director of strategic operations, a newly created position that came with a title, a salary that made her gasp, and the authority to shape Moretti Capital's future alongside him. "People will talk," he warned. "They'll say you slept your way to the top, that you don't deserve it, that I'm showing favoritism." "Let them talk. I'll prove them wrong by being so good at this job they forget I ever did anything else." Lena smiled. "Besides, I did sleep my way to the top. I just also happen to be brilliant at my job." Adrian laughed, pulling her into his arms. "Yes, you are." The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. The Bellamy acquisition was successfully integrated into Moretti Capital's portfolio. Victor Castellano was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His organization was dismantled, his assets distributed among his victims, his name becoming exactly what Adrian had promised, a cautionary tale. Paul Castellano sent a postcard from somewhere in South America, no return address, just 2 words, "Thank you." Adrian gradually stepped back from the shadowy deals and dangerous alliances that had sustained his empire, choosing instead to build something legitimate and lasting. He endowed scholarships for kids from backgrounds like his own. He funded medical research and affordable housing initiatives. He became the kind of businessman his father had never been, one who used power to build rather than destroy. And through it all, Lena stood beside him, not behind him, not in his shadow, but beside him as an equal partner. She rebuilt Bellamy's reputation, negotiated deals that brought life-saving medications to underserved communities, and proved to everyone who doubted her that she'd earned her place through talent and grit. 6 months after the press conference, Adrian took her back to Chicago, back to the restaurant where they'd first admitted their feelings, where everything had shifted from professional to personal. They were halfway through dinner when he set down his wine glass and said, "I have a question." Okay? Remember when I said I'd ask you properly, with a better ring and a better speech? Lena's heart kicked. Adrian! He was already moving, sliding out of his chair and onto one knee. The restaurant went quiet around them, but Lena barely noticed. All she could see was Adrian, looking at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. Lena Hayes, you walked into my life when I'd stopped believing in second chances. You saw past the walls I'd built and loved me anyway. You made me want to be better, do better, build something worthy of you. He pulled out a ring box, different from the promise ring, this one holding a diamond that caught the light like captured stars. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that choosing each other was the best decision we ever made? She was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her left hand this time, and the restaurant erupted in applause. But Lena barely heard it. She was too busy kissing the man she loved, the man who'd turned her invisible life into something extraordinary. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony overlooking the ocean, exactly the kind of escape they dreamed about during those early days when the world felt too dangerous and the future too uncertain. Sal gave her away, gruff and sentimental despite his tough exterior. Marcus was Adrian's best man, making a speech about how he'd never seen his boss smile before Lena arrived. The wedding was private, intimate, just the people who mattered most. No media circus, no business obligations, no shadows from the past. Just two people promising forever in front of the people they loved. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Greece, disconnected from the world, learning how to be husband and wife without the weight of empires and enemies pressing down on them. They ate at tiny cafes, swam in crystal clear water, made love on sun-warmed sheets, and talked about the future they were building together. When they returned to New York, it was to news that Adrian had been named one of the city's most influential business leaders, recognition for his work transforming Moretti Capital into a force for good. The article mentioned his father exactly once, in the past tense, as someone whose legacy had been thoroughly rewritten by his son. Lena framed that article and hung it in their home office. A year after the wedding, she discovered she was pregnant. They talked about children, about whether they wanted to bring a child into the complicated world they inhabited. But holding the positive test, seeing Adrian's face light up with joy and terror in equal measure, Lena knew it was right. Their daughter was born on a rainy October morning, small and perfect, and screaming with the kind of determination that made both her parents laugh through tears. They named her Sophia Elena Moretti. Sophia for Adrian's grandmother, the one person in his family who'd shown him kindness, and Elena for the woman whose death had taught him the cost of love. Adrian held his daughter with a gentleness that contradicted everything about his reputation, tears streaming down his face as he counted her tiny fingers. "I'm going to give you everything," he whispered to her. "Everything I never had. Safety, love, a father who chooses you over power every single time." Lena watched them, her heart so full it hurt. This was what they'd fought for. This moment, this family, this future built on choosing each other, and choosing better, and choosing love over everything else. 2 years later, Adrian officially walked away from the last of his father's legacy operations. He sold the final properties tied to the old organization, donated the proceeds to victims of organized crime, and made a public statement that the Moretti name would no longer be associated with the past. "From this day forward," he told the assembled press, Lena standing beside him, "Moretti Capital represents innovation, integrity, and investment in the future. We're not running from our history, we're learning from it. We're proving that change is possible, that people can become more than their worst moments." The Moretti Foundation launched a year later, focused on providing opportunities for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Education, mentorship, job training, support systems that Adrian had never had growing up. Lena ran it alongside her work at Moretti Capital, building programs that transformed lives. They hired people from the communities they served, people who understood struggle and survival, people who'd been invisible, just like Lena had once been. On Sophia's 5th birthday, they threw a party in Central Park. Friends, family, colleagues, all the people who'd become part of their unconventional family over the years. Marcus brought his new girlfriend. Sal brought homemade cannoli and stories about Adrian as a boy that made everyone laugh. As the sun set and Sophia played with other children, Adrian pulled Lena close. "You ever think about where we'd be if you hadn't fixed my tie that day?" he asked. Sometimes. Usually when I want to remind myself how far we've come. She leaned into him. Do you regret any of it? The chaos, the danger, everything we went through? Not for a second, because it brought me here. To you. To her. To this life. He kissed her temple. You were right, you know. That day in Chicago when you told me to stop trying to save you from myself. We did better together than we ever could have apart. We made something good out of something broken. We made something extraordinary. Adrian turned her to face him. I love you, Lena Moretti. I loved you when you were invisible. I loved you when you were terrified. I love you now when you're the strongest person I know. And I'll love you forever, through whatever comes next. Forever sounds perfect. They kissed as the sun disappeared behind the skyline, their daughter's laughter carrying on the wind, surrounded by the family they'd chosen and the life they'd built from ashes and hope. The elevator doors had opened on Lena's first day to a world of power and danger she'd never imagined. But she'd walked through them anyway, fixed a crooked tie, and changed everything. She'd transformed from invisible to indispensable, from alone to beloved, from a woman who'd spent her life staying small to one who stood beside a king and made him better. And in the end, that's what love did. It didn't complete you or fix you or save you from yourself. It gave you the courage to be more than you'd ever thought possible. It turned two broken people into something whole. It proved that even in the darkest worlds, choosing each other could light the way home. Adrian and Lena had chosen each other, every day. Through war and peace, danger and safety, doubt and certainty. And they'd built something that would outlast them both, a legacy not of power or fear, but of love and redemption and the quiet revolution of becoming better than the world expected. Their story wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was theirs, and that made it everything.